Hello my dear students, welcome to your Geography's online class. Today we will be discussing about the landforms associated with endogenous processes from the chapter Endogenous Processes and Associated Landforms. So when we talk about landforms, we mostly get to understand the continents on which various landforms are being formed, or the land structure of different sizes and shapes are formed. So in such case, we find the mountains, plateaus and plains as the major landforms formed on this earth surface. The plains comprise of the major part of the continents, while the mountainous areas comprise the least. We see that the plains, they are almost 41%, mountains, they comprise of 26%, while the plateaus, they comprise of 33% of the continents. So in this section, we will be discussing in details about the mountains and their types. So when we define mountains, or express them in words, we say these are an elevated land masses or land surface above the height of 900 meters above the mean sea level. So if we find such landforms which are higher elevated or an uplifted part, to them we call mountains, and they comprise of only 26% of the continental landmass. Well, in the words of Professor Finch, a mountain is that land block whose height is at least 900 meters and above the sea level, and its slope makes an angle of 25 degree to 35 degree with the horizontal plane. So according to Professor Finch, this is the base. The slope of the land, if it's either 25 degree to 35 degree and is at an elevated surface from its surrounding, but has to be over 900 meters, this is called a mountain. If you see the geometric figure to be drawn as per Professor Finch's definition of mountain, the elevated land surface from the base with its side almost, that is the limbs of the mountain, having an angle of 25 to 35 degree and is at height over 900 meters, that is to what we call mountains. On the basis of the formation, or you can say origin, the mountains are divided into four types: the fold mountain, the block mountain, volcanic mountain and residual mountain. So these are the four major types of mountains that we find on this surface. So now let us describe them in details. So the first type of mountain to be discussed is fold mountain, and it is defined as a mountain which is formed by the folding of rock strata due to compressional force. We discussed about the process called folding and different types of fold form. So when force is applied from either direction or from one direction and the other remains static, what happens is the horizontal layer of the rock strata, it starts folding. So this is where we can see. This is a horizontal layer. Now in this horizontal layer of the earth's crust, forces are applied, that is compressional forces are applied. With the appliance of this compressional force, the horizontal layer of this rock crust starts bending, and this bending results in an upliftment of the earth's crust, and this uplifted part later comes to be called as the fold mountains. A very good example that we can discuss is of the Himalayas, which is in Asia, the Andes and the Rockies, which is in America. Then you have the Andes, it's in the American part. Himalayas is completely a continental type which is formed because of compressions of two different plates. We will discuss the formation of fold mountains on the basis of plate tectonics theory. As we have already discussed the theory related to the movements of the Earth's crust, to which we generally refer to as plate. This plate is termed as, or this theory is termed as plate tectonics theory. The plate tectonic theory was propounded by William Morgan, who has discussed that the plates which floats over the mantle, it keeps moving and gets displaced every year with almost 2 to 5 centimeters. So this movement of the plates has resulted in a compressional force to be applied with either of the two continental blocks or with that of continental and the oceanic blocks. So with the forces applied, the blocks of Earth's crust, it tends to fold and results in the formation of a through, which is known as depression, and the other, the anticline, which is the upfold. So this folded structure results in the formation of mountains. But at different stages, the formation of fold mountains can be discussed. It was believed that the Earth had a long and narrow, elongated, shallow surface, and this shallow surface was known as geosyncline. Geo means earth and syncline means depression. And in this depression, from either of this elevated surface, the sediments were brought and were deposited. So here a lot amount of sediments were deposited. Now these two elevated land surface, due to the movement of the Earth's crust, resulted in compressing towards each other. With the compression, applied, the sediments that were deposited in this geosyncline happened to squeeze and then form the folds. This resulted in the formation of folds. With further compliance of the force, the height of these very folds tend to increase, and then we see the fold mountains being formed on this Earth's crust. So this is how the fold mountains were formed on this Earth's surface. On this very basis, we can describe the formation of Himalayas. The formation of Himalayas saw with two different landmass coming closer to each other. For the description, to describe the formation of the Himalayas, let us see with the same diagram. The geosyncline, which we considered an elongated landmass, was considered to be the basin of Tethys Sea. And two huge land masses named as Angara land in the north and Gondwana land in the south, that is in the southern hemisphere. From these two land masses, huge deposits were made on the basin of Tethys Sea, which was a shallow, elongated basin. Now, with the forces applied, the Gondwana land started moving northward towards Angara land. And this northward movement of the Gondwana land resulted the sediments deposited in the Tethys Sea to squeeze up, and from that very sediments which got squeezed were folded and then resulted in the formation of what we see today is the Himalayas. There are various plates which has been formed because of the breaking up of continents. Of those, the importance and the notable ones that we see are the Pacific plate, the Eurasian plate, the American plate, African plate, the Australian plate, and the Antarctic plate. So these plates keep moving and results in the formations of these kind of mountains. Now, of this fold mountain again, it is of two different types, or in fact we can categorize fold mountains into two types, one as the old fold mountain and the other as the new fold mountain. When we describe the fold mountains, we find two different types, that is fold of old type and fold mountains, that is a new fold. So the new fold mountains are higher in their height and they have very steep slopes with very deep valleys. While the old fold mountains, they generally have lesser height and then are mostly rounded in shape with gentler slopes. Now let us discuss the block mountain. So with the block mountain, what we see or how we can define it as the mountains that are formed due to either the upliftment or subsidence of the crustal block. And this happens when cracks, that is faults, occur on the earth surface. Again, faulting is a process that we discussed which occurs on this earth surface due to the tensional forces that acts upon the crust. So let us see here. Let us consider this as a block of the crust. On this crustal block, when tensional forces act upon, it results in cracks to occur. So with the occurrence of the crack, these block of lands, now here, with the fault occurring on this land surface, this crustal block now either gets subsided or is uplifted. And this uplifted portion of the land or the crust seems to be like as it has formed a mountain, because now you see the height of this block, block A, is higher than that of block B. So this block A stands as block mountain as a whole part of the earth's crust is uplifted. These block mountains are known as horst. They very much look like that of plateaus, but the formation is different from that of plateaus. So this block mountain is known as horst in German term, while the block mountain is also associated with a valley. The steep-sided valley that is formed on this crustal block, between these two crustal blocks. So if we see this depression between these two crustal blocks due to the subsidence of this central portion, the valley formed with steep-sided walls, or you can say steep-sided mountains, is known as Rift Valley. This Rift Valley is known as Graben in German term. In India, we see such blocks been formed in the Satpuras and Vindhyas, and the Rift Valley formed in between these two blocks is where river Narmada flows. Now let us discuss about volcanic mountains. Volcanic mountains are the mountains that are formed by the accumulation of lava. This happens when volcanic eruption takes place. The lava flows out of these volcanoes and then are deposited either very close to the volcanoes, or they have been scattered all around. And when these lavas are deposited and forms a shape of a mountain, almost conical in shape with the accumulation of these lava, they form the volcanic mountains. They are mostly composed of igneous rocks, the basaltic rocks, and are quite hard in structure. These volcanic mountains are also known as mountains of accumulation. They are also known as mountains of accumulation as because they are formed by the accumulating of the volcanic lava that comes from the interior of the Earth's crust. Now let us discuss the residual mountain. The residual mountains, as a fourth type of mountains, is formed only after the formation of the first three mountains, that is the fold mountain, block mountain, or volcanic mountain. After the formations of the first three mountains, in years and years, they undergo a change because of denudation process, including weathering and erosion. So as those mountains like fold, block, and the volcanic mountains undergoes a large scale denudation process, the softer materials of those mountains are mostly crumbled into pieces and are transported elsewhere. And later stages, with mostly the hard and resistant rock remains back of these mountains, and those remained portion of the mountain is known as residual mountain, as the term residual refers to residue, that is the remained portion. The remnant portions of these mountains, which further cannot be eroded very easily or weathered very easily, remains back as a part of residual mountain. The Aravallis in India is a very good example of residual mountains. As in earlier times, it happened to be quite higher in their height, but due to rigorous weathering and erosion over the years, its height has changed and its shape and the walls of the mountains has also changed from steeper to gentler. For example, if we see this mountain as quite steep and pointed, the residual mountains are more over a rounded top and a gentler slope. If you see the angle here, the angle is lesser than as compared to the angle here formed by the limbs of the mountains. So these mountains are also known as relict mountains or also known as mountains of denudation. So thank you very much class for today.